In the vast expanse of space, where stars shimmered like diamonds on a velvet canvas, there existed a planet known to its inhabitants as Xylophia 7. It was a world of towering crystalline spires and sprawling bioluminescent forests, home to an advanced alien civilization ruled by their enigmatic monarch, the alien queen, Zanara. Her presence commanded awe and reverence, her elongated frame adorned with iridescent scales that caught the light in mesmerizing patterns. She carried herself with grace but also an air of mystery, for few dared to approach her without summons. Zanara's court buzzed with activity one fateful evening when she summoned her trusted advisor, Voctor, a wiry alien with translucent skin that pulsed faintly with veins of blue energy. "Voctor," Zanara began, her voice smooth yet commanding, "I have discovered something peculiar." In her claw-like hands rested a small, battered book bound in leather, its pages worn from frequent handling. The cover bore no title, only smudged fingerprints betraying its human origins. "This belongs to him," Zanara continued, nodding toward the corner of the chamber where a trembling figure stood under heavy guard. This unfortunate soul was none other than Jarrick, a low-ranking maintenance worker aboard the intergalactic trade vessel Celestial Wanderer. He had been captured during a routine inspection after accidentally straying into Xylophian airspace. While his intentions were harmless enough, merely seeking repairs for his malfunctioning ship, he never anticipated what secrets he'd inadvertently brought along. Jarrick shifted uncomfortably under the weight of Zanara's piercing gaze. His humanoid features betrayed every ounce of fear coursing through him. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his fingers twitched nervously at his sides, and his eyes darted between the guards and the queen. What made matters worse was the undeniable realization dawning upon him. He knew exactly what she held in her grasp. That little black book wasn't just any journal. It contained thoughts he'd never meant anyone else to see. Thoughts about her. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the glowing crystals embedded in the walls. Jarrick swallowed hard, his throat dry as sandpaper. Zanara opened the diary slowly, flipping through its pages with deliberate care. As her sharp eyes scanned the text, her expression shifted from curiosity to intrigue, and then to something darker. A muscle twitched near her jawline, though whether it signaled anger or amusement remained unclear. "Who wrote this?" Zanara finally asked, her tone deceptively calm. But beneath the surface lay a storm waiting to erupt. Jarrick froze, unable to muster even a syllable in response. Instead, he stared at the floor, willing himself invisible. The silence stretched taut, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of Voctor's elongated fingers against his armrest. When Jarrick failed to answer immediately, Zanara took a step closer, towering over him like a storm cloud ready to unleash lightning. "Speak!" she demanded, her voice slicing through the tension like a blade. Startled, Jarrick stammered, I did, Your Majesty." His voice cracked under the pressure, betraying both his guilt and terror. "And you thought it wise to write such explicit musings about me?" Zanara continued, raising one elegant eyebrow. Her words dripped with mockery, yet there was an edge to them that hinted at suppressed fury. Jarrick's face flushed crimson as he realized she'd already read some of the more scandalous entries aloud earlier, much to the stifled amusement of her advisors. One particularly embarrassing passage described her regal bearing in terms far too intimate for polite company, or any company, really. "I didn't mean for anyone to find it," Jarrick blurted out desperately, clutching at straws. "It was private. Just thoughts. Not meant to offend." His explanation sounded feeble even to his own ears. Around him, the guards exchanged glances, clearly struggling not to laugh outright. Even Voctor couldn't suppress a smirk, though he quickly masked it behind a cough when Zanara shot him a warning glare. For all his panic, however, Jarrick couldn't help but notice something odd. Despite her apparent outrage, Zanara seemed almost entertained. There was a flicker of amusement dancing in her otherwise stern eyes, though she kept it well hidden. Perhaps sensing his observation, she leaned down slightly, bringing her face closer to his. "You humans are strange creatures indeed," she murmured, her voice softer now but still laced with authority. "Do you truly believe flattery disguised as depravity will save you?" Before Jarrick could respond, the chamber doors slid open with a hiss, revealing another figure entering the scene. This newcomer was none other than Calith, Zanara's younger sister and occasional rival. with fiery red hair cascading down her back and eyes that gleamed with mischief. Caliph had a reputation for stirring up trouble wherever she went. Clad in sleek armor adorned with intricate carvings, she strode confidently into the room, her boots clicking against the polished floor. "Well, well," Caliph drawled, her lips curling into a sly grin as she surveyed the situation. "What do we have here? A human daring to pen poetry, or should I say filth, about my dear sister." She sauntered over to Zanara, peering curiously at the diary still clutched in the queen's hands. "May I?" Without waiting for permission, Caliph snatched the book away and began flipping through its pages with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Oh my!" she exclaimed theatrically, her voice dripping with mock horror. "This is quite the scandalous tale. Her radiant scales shimmer like liquid starlight. How poetic! And oh, listen to this gem. If only I could run my fingers across her majestic crown." Caliph burst into laughter, clutching her sides as tears welled up in her eyes. "Humans are hilarious. They think they're being subtle while practically shouting their desires." Zanara crossed her arms, unamused by her sister's antics. "Caliph, this is hardly the time for jests," she said sharply, though her tone lacked genuine irritation. Meanwhile, Jarrick wished the ground would swallow him whole. Each word Caliph read aloud felt like another nail in his coffin, and the growing chorus of chuckles from the assembled courtiers only deepened his humiliation. But Caliph wasn't done yet. "Wait, wait!" she exclaimed, holding up a hand for dramatic effect. "There's more. Oh, how delightful! She moves like a goddess among mortals, yet I dream of making her mine." At this point, Caliph collapsed onto a nearby bench, overcome with mirth. "Honestly, Jarrick," she managed between gasps for air, "you must teach me your ways. Clearly, subtlety isn't your forte." Despite her outward composure, Zanara couldn't entirely suppress a smirk at her sister's antics. Yet beneath the surface, a flicker of intrigue sparked within her. There was something oddly compelling about the raw honesty of Jarrick's writings, something refreshingly human. Most beings in her court tiptoed around her, speaking in carefully chosen platitudes designed to flatter without offending. But this clumsy, terrified man had laid bare his innermost thoughts, however inappropriate, without pretense or guile. As the laughter subsided and Caliph finally relinquished the diary, Zanara turned her attention back to Jarrick. For the first time since discovering the journal, she allowed herself to study him closely, not as a trespasser or a fool, but as a person. Beneath his unkempt appearance and palpable anxiety, there was vulnerability in his eyes, a sincerity that resonated with her despite herself. Was it possible, she wondered, that these so-called dirty thoughts stemmed not from malice but from admiration? From longing? Her mind wandered momentarily, recalling fragments of her own youth when she too had harbored secret desires and dreams deemed unsuitable for a future queen. The memory stirred emotions long buried beneath layers of duty and decorum. Could this human's audacity remind her of what it meant to feel alive, to yearn for something beyond protocol and power? Still, practicality anchored her thoughts. Allowing such behavior to go unchecked could undermine her authority, especially if word spread among her subjects. Yet punishing him outright seemed excessive. Perhaps there was a middle ground, a way to turn this bizarre incident into something useful, or at least entertaining. A mischievous glint returned to her eye as she considered the possibilities. Without warning, the chamber doors burst open once more, this time admitting a squadron of heavily armed guards dragging in a second human captive. Unlike Jarrick, whose disheveled state spoke of innocence and panic, this newcomer exuded confidence bordering on arrogance. Dressed in a tattered yet unmistakably stylish flight suit, the man introduced himself with a swagger that defied the gravity of the situation. "Name's Calder," he announced boldly, flashing a grin that revealed teeth whiter than the pristine marble floors. "And before anyone asks, yes, I'm every bit as charming as I look." His bravado earned him a collective groan from the guards, who tightened their grip on his arms in response. Undeterred, Calder glanced around the room, taking stock of the scene before locking eyes with Zanara. "Ah, Your Highness," he said smoothly, bowing with exaggerated flair despite his restrained position. "Always a pleasure." Calder's arrival threw the already tense atmosphere into chaos. Caliph perked up instantly, intrigued by the new addition to the drama, while Wachter frowned deeply, muttering something about humans multiplying like pests. Jarrick, meanwhile, looked as though he might faint. "Not you too," he whispered hoarsely, his voice barely audible over the commotion. Calder winked at him, seemingly unfazed by the dire circumstances. "What brings you here, Calder?" Zanara asked coolly, though her tone betrayed a hint of curiosity. Calder shrugged nonchalantly, as if being hauled before an alien queen were an everyday occurrence. "Just passing through," he replied breezily. "Though I hear my buddy Jarrick here got himself into quite the pickle. Thought I'd lend a hand, or maybe take notes for future reference." His quip drew a ripple of nervous laughter from the crowd, though Zanara remained impassive. As the guards shoved Calder beside Jarrick, the two men exchanged a glance fraught with unspoken tension. Where Jarrick radiated fear and regret, Calder exuded defiance and mischief, creating an odd dynamic that left everyone, including Zanara, uncertain of what to expect next. Whatever happened, it was clear this encounter was far from over. With Calder's unexpected arrival adding fuel to the fire, Zanara decided it was time to assert control over the increasingly chaotic situation. Raising a hand to silence the murmurs rippling through the chamber, she fixed both humans with a steely gaze. "Enough," she declared, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "We shall determine the truth of this matter through trial." The word hung heavy in the air, prompting Jarrick to pale visibly while Calder merely raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "A trial?" Calith echoed, her tone dripping with skepticism. "For scribbling naughty thoughts in a notebook? Surely, dear sister, you can think of something more creative than hauling them before the Council of Elders." Zanara shot her a warning look, but Calith pressed on undeterred. "Besides, don't you find their incompetence rather endearing? Almost refreshing?" Ignoring her sister's antics, Zanara turned to Voctor, who had been observing the spectacle with growing impatience. "Prepare the arena," she instructed curtly. "Let us see how these humans fare when faced with challenges befitting their audacity." Voctor nodded sharply, his translucent skin glowing brighter as he processed the order. The mention of the arena elicited a collective gasp from the courtiers. It was rare for outsiders to be subjected to such tests, which often involved physical feats, mental puzzles, or even combat against Xylofian champions. Calder leaned casually toward Jarrick, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear. "Well, buddy, looks like we're getting the VIP treatment after all. Hope you're ready to impress the Queen with more than just your questionable prose." Jarrick shot him a panicked glare, but Calder merely grinned, clearly relishing the opportunity to stir the pot further. As preparations for the trial commenced, Zanara retreated to her private chambers, leaving the humans under close surveillance. Once alone, she allowed herself a moment of reflection, pacing slowly across the luminous floor. There was something unsettling about the entire ordeal, something that gnawed at the edges of her thoughts. It wasn't just the absurdity of the situation or the potential threat posed by these humans. It was deeper, more personal. Their presence forced her to confront aspects of herself she had long suppressed. Curiosity, vulnerability, perhaps even loneliness. She paused by a large crystalline window, gazing out at the swirling nebulae beyond. For centuries, she had ruled with unwavering authority, her decisions guided solely by logic and tradition. Yet now, confronted with two bumbling humans, one timid and remorseful, the other brash and unpredictable, she found herself questioning whether her reign had grown too rigid, too distant. Did she crave connection, even subconsciously? Or was she simply intrigued by the novelty of their flaws? A knock at the door interrupted her musings. It was Calith, who entered without waiting for permission. "Still brooding, I see," her sister remarked lightly, plopping down onto a nearby divan. "Honestly, Zanara, you need to loosen up. These humans are harmless. They're practically begging to entertain us." Zanara sighed, torn between annoyance and gratitude for Calith's ability to cut through her introspection. "They may be harmless," Zanara replied evenly, "but they are not without consequence. If word spreads that a mere human dared to write such things about me—" She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Calith waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, please. The court loves a good scandal. Besides, imagine the stories they'll tell. The mighty Queen Zanara brought low by a smitten maintenance worker and his rogue accomplice. It's practically legend-worthy." Zanara couldn't help but chuckle at her sister's irreverence. "You make it sound so trivial," she said, shaking her head. But deep down, she knew Caliph had a point. Perhaps there was wisdom in embracing the absurdity of the moment rather than resisting it. After all, ruling required more than strength. It demanded adaptability, creativity, and sometimes a touch of humor. Meanwhile, back in the holding area, Jarrick and Calder sat side by side, their contrasting demeanors creating an odd harmony. Jarrick wrung his hands nervously, muttering apologies under his breath, while Calder lounged comfortably, cracking jokes about the likelihood of facing laser-wielding beasts in the arena. Despite their differences, a tentative camaraderie began to form between them, born of shared adversity and mutual bewilderment at the alien world they now inhabited. As the hours passed, anticipation built within the palace. Courtiers whispered excitedly about the upcoming trial, placing bets on which human might emerge victorious, or at least survive. Guards polished weapons and adjusted holographic displays, ensuring everything would proceed according to plan. And somewhere amidst the flurry of activity, Zanara watched silently, her mind racing with possibilities. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: life on Xylophia 7 was about to get infinitely more interesting. The arena loomed ahead, a colossal structure carved into the heart of Xylophia 7's crystalline landscape. Its walls shimmered with veins of glowing minerals, pulsating faintly as if alive, casting an otherworldly glow over the gathered crowd. The air buzzed with excitement, humming like an electric current as courtiers and dignitaries took their seats in elaborate viewing pods suspended high above the ground. Below, Jarrick and Calder stood side by side at the entrance, flanked by guards whose armored forms gleamed under the bioluminescent light. Jarrick's knees wobbled visibly, his breath coming in shallow gasps. "This is it," he muttered, clutching the edge of his tattered jacket. "We're going to die out there." Calder, ever the picture of nonchalance, slapped him lightly on the back. "Relax, buddy. Dying's only one of many possible outcomes here. Besides, I've seen worse odds," and walked away looking fabulous. His grin was infectious enough to coax a weak smile from Jarrick, though it quickly faded as the massive gates began to creak open. Inside, the arena stretched vast and intimidating, its floor segmented into shifting platforms that floated above pools of luminescent liquid. Strange creatures prowled along the edges, their eyes glinting predatorily. At the center stood Zanara herself, resplendent in ceremonial armor adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and swirl like living art. Beside her, Caliph lounged casually on a hovering dais, sipping what appeared to be some kind of neon-blue beverage through a straw-like appendage. "Welcome." Zanara's voice boomed across the space, amplified by unseen technology. "Today, these humans will face 3 trials designed to test their courage, ingenuity, and adaptability." She paused for dramatic effect, her gaze sweeping over both captives. "Should they succeed, they may earn not only their freedom but also my favor. Fail." Her tone turned icy. "And they shall learn why challenging the Queen of Xylophia carries consequences." With that, the first trial commenced. The floating platforms beneath them shifted violently, forcing Jarrick and Calder to scramble for balance. From hidden alcoves emerged mechanical constructs resembling sleek, spider-like creatures, their metallic limbs clicking ominously as they advanced. Each bore insignias etched onto their bodies, symbols representing various virtues valued by Xylophian society: honor, cunning, strength, and unity. Calder sprang into action immediately, his movements surprisingly agile despite his earlier bravado. He grabbed a discarded staff-like weapon lying nearby and began swinging it with practiced ease, fending off 2 of the constructs while shouting instructions to Jarrick. "Pick something up. Anything," he barked, narrowly dodging a swipe from one of the machines. Jarrick, meanwhile, froze momentarily, overwhelmed by panic. But then, recalling fragments of maintenance work aboard the Celestial Wanderer, he noticed a control panel embedded in the nearest platform. With trembling fingers, he activated it, causing the segment to tilt sharply and send one of the constructs tumbling into the glowing liquid below. A cheer erupted from the audience, startling him back to reality. As the battle raged on, Calder demonstrated unexpected resourcefulness, using debris scattered around the arena to disable another construct. Meanwhile, Jarrick discovered an unlikely talent for problem-solving, rerouting energy flows within the platforms to create barriers against the remaining threats. Together, they managed to dismantle all 4 constructs just as the platforms stabilized once more. Breathing heavily, they exchanged a glance of mutual respect before turning toward Zanara, who observed them with keen interest. "Impressive," she admitted, tilting her head slightly. "But this is merely the beginning." For the second trial, the arena transformed dramatically. The platforms sank into the liquid below, replaced by a dense forest of towering crystalline trees that emitted soft chimes whenever touched. Mist swirled thickly around their bases, obscuring visibility beyond a few feet. Above, holographic projections flickered to life, displaying cryptic symbols and equations that floated lazily in midair. "The task is simple," Zanara announced. "Solve the puzzles presented to you and retrieve the artifact hidden within the labyrinth. Work together, or fail alone." With that, she gestured, and the mist thickened further, swallowing Jarrick and Calder whole. Separated almost instantly, the 2 men navigated the maze independently at first. Jarrick stumbled upon a series of interconnected crystals, each emitting a different musical note when tapped. Realizing the sequence corresponded to the floating symbols above, he pieced together a melody that unlocked a hidden passage. On the other side, he found Calder grappling with a mechanical puzzle involving rotating gears and levers. "Need a hand?" Jarrick asked hesitantly, stepping closer. Calder grinned despite his frustration. "About time you showed up. These things are trickier than they look." Working together, they deciphered the mechanism, revealing a small pedestal holding a glowing orb, the artifact they sought. But as they reached for it, the ground trembled, and the crystalline trees began to close in, narrowing the pathways behind them. Panic surged anew, but this time, their teamwork proved seamless. Alternating between leading and following, they navigated the collapsing maze with increasing urgency until finally bursting into the central clearing, artifact clasped firmly in hand. Zanara watched silently, her expression unreadable. When they returned to her, she held out her hand without a word. As Calder placed the orb into her palm, she examined it closely before nodding. "You have proven yourselves capable of collaboration. Now comes the final trial, a challenge unlike any you've faced thus far." The arena shifted again, dissolving entirely into darkness. When the lights returned, Jarrick and Calder found themselves standing on opposite ends of a vast chasm spanned by a single narrow bridge made of translucent material. Above, storm clouds brewed ominously, crackling with bursts of violet lightning. Below, the glowing liquid churned violently, hinting at unseen dangers lurking beneath its surface. "You must cross the bridge," Zanara declared, her voice carrying an edge of finality. "However, beware. It responds not to physical strength but to emotional resonance. Doubt, fear, anger, all will weaken its integrity. Only clarity of purpose and unity of spirit will see you safely across." Without hesitation, Calder stepped forward, testing the bridge cautiously. It shimmered under his weight but held firm. Encouraged, he motioned for Jarrick to follow. Yet as they progressed, the environment grew increasingly hostile. Shadows manifested around them, whispering doubts and fears directly into their minds. For Jarrick, the voices dredged up memories of inadequacy and shame. For Calder, they highlighted moments of arrogance and recklessness. Halfway across, the strain became unbearable. The bridge quivered dangerously, threatening to shatter. Jarrick faltered, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "I can't do this." Calder stopped abruptly, turning to face him. For once, his usual smirk was gone, replaced by earnest determination. "Yes, you can," he said firmly, gripping Jarrick's shoulder. "We've made it this far because we trusted each other. Don't let those shadows win, they're just echoes, nothing more." Taking a deep breath, Calder added, "And hey, if we go down, at least we'll make a great story for the history books." Something in his words struck a chord within Jarrick. Summoning every ounce of resolve, he nodded, focusing on the image of Zanara waiting patiently on the far side. Slowly, step by painstaking step, they resumed their journey, the bridge stabilizing beneath their renewed conviction. Finally, they reached solid ground, collapsing in exhaustion as applause erupted from the spectators. Zanara approached them, her expression softer now, tinged with something akin to admiration. "You have endured much," she said quietly. "But your trials are not yet complete. There remains one final question, one neither of you has dared to ask." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Then, with a knowing smile, she continued, "Why did I choose to spare you both?" The silence that followed was deafening. Zanara's question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Jarrick and Calder exchanged a glance, both too stunned to respond immediately. The weight of everything they had endured, the trials, the humiliation, the fear, seemed to crystallize into this singular moment. For once, even Calder was at a loss for words. Finally, Jarrick found his voice, though it trembled slightly. Is that what this has been about?" he asked hesitantly. "Testing us? Seeing if we're worthy of something?" Zanara tilted her head, her iridescent scales catching the light as she considered him. "Worthy? No," she replied softly. "This was never about worthiness. It was about understanding. Understanding you, and perhaps myself." Her admission caught everyone off guard, including Calith, who leaned forward on her hovering dais with genuine interest. Zanara turned to address the crowd, her tone shifting from personal reflection to regal authority. "For centuries, I have ruled Xylophia 7 with precision and discipline. Yet these humans, flawed and fragile as they are, have reminded me of something vital. Imperfection breeds connection. Their audacity, their vulnerability, it is alien to us, yet profoundly human. And in their humanity lies a lesson we would do well to embrace." The court murmured in agreement, though some faces still bore traces of skepticism. Sensing their unease, Zanara raised a hand to silence them before continuing. "I spared you because you dared to see me not as a queen but as a being capable of emotion, desire, and even weakness. You wrote your thoughts without restraint. Calder faced every challenge with unshakable confidence, and together, you proved that unity transcends differences. That is a truth worth preserving." Calder finally broke the tension with a grin. "Well, Your Majesty, if you wanted to feel seen, all you had to do was ask," he quipped, earning a ripple of laughter from the audience. Even Zanara couldn't suppress a smile. But Jarrick remained thoughtful, his earlier shame giving way to a newfound sense of purpose. Summoning his courage, he stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady now, "I may have written those words out of foolishness, but they came from a place of admiration. If my clumsiness has taught you anything, or brought joy to your court, I am grateful. But more than anything, I hope it reminds us all that no matter how different we seem, there's always common ground to be found." His sincerity struck a chord, and the chamber erupted in applause. Calith clapped enthusiastically, shouting, "Bravo! Humans might actually be bearable after all," while Voctor nodded approvingly, his translucent skin glowing brighter in approval. Zanara regarded Jarrick for a long moment before speaking. "You have earned not only your freedom but also my respect. As such, I offer you both a choice. Return to your vessel and leave Xylophia 7 forever, or remain here as honored guests, ambassadors if you will, bridging the gap between our worlds." Calder didn't hesitate. "Stay? Are you kidding? This place is incredible. Besides, someone's got to teach these folks how to party." He winked at Calith, who rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her amusement. Jarrick, however, took a moment to consider. The thought of leaving behind the chaos and danger of space travel appealed to him, especially now that he discovered a kindred spirit in Zanara. Slowly, he nodded. "I'll stay," he said firmly. "But only if I can keep writing, about life, about people, about, well, maybe less scandalous things this time." Zanara chuckled, a rare sound that echoed warmly through the chamber. "Agreed. Though I reserve the right to review anything published about me." With that, the tension dissolved entirely, replaced by celebration. Over the following weeks, Jarrick and Calder settled into their new roles, becoming beloved figures within the palace. Jarrick chronicled their adventures, crafting stories that entertained and educated both humans and Xylophians alike. Calder, ever the charmer, became an unofficial cultural liaison, introducing games, music, and humor that delighted even the most stoic members of the court. As for Zanara, she found herself changed by their presence. Her reign grew more compassionate, her decisions informed not just by logic but by empathy. She often sought Jarek's counsel, valuing his perspective as much as his friendship. And though she never admitted it aloud, she occasionally reread passages from his diary, finding comfort in the raw honesty of his words. One evening, under the shimmering canopy of bioluminescent trees, Zanara joined Jarek and Calder for a quiet gathering. They sat around a small fire, sharing stories and laughter beneath the stars. For the first time in years, Zanara felt truly at peace. A queen, yes, but also simply a being among beings, connected by shared experiences and mutual respect. And so, what began as a tale of embarrassment and peril transformed into one of growth, understanding, and unexpected harmony. On Xylophia 7, where differences once divided, unity now reigned, a testament to the power of courage, cooperation, and the indomitable spirit of humanity.